when you say challenge yourself, there's an entire side of challenge that most people are not addressing.
Yeah.
Pushing is not that hard. What would be hard is not pushing.
Right.
What would be hard is for a man to be more gentle.
Yeah.
Can't we say right now we're destroying the planet perfectly?
Yeah.
Like maybe we have to make things so bad that it actually wakes us up to what the fuck we're doing.
Yeah.
You are nature. One of humans' greatest mistakes is to think that we're separate from
Yeah, 100%.
something to someone and they tell you to stop and you don't stop. That's called rape.
Right.
Or assault and battery.
Yeah.
That's the way most people exercise.
Yeah.
Right? Like, listen, there's a universal law. Every viewer that is going to watch your podcast understands that law in some way. And that law says...
My guest today, Bryan Kest, he may be the yoga teacher alive who's taught more students than anyone else on earth, including in India, I believe. And he's been teaching for over 40 years. He's taught, by my estimation, upwards of 10 or 20,000 classes, probably more than 1 million students around 25 countries. He's recently written a book, an autobiography of an American yogi, and I had a chance to speak with him. The one thing that I think is really important about Bryan is that he's a living example of the practices of wellness, of spiritual, physical, mental, emotional wellness. On all levels, the highest path that you can go for. In this interview, we went over a whole array of like how to approach wellness and being a good human in life and all the challenges that we face today, including, really what is it to attain and how do you attain health, wellness, and longevity, and stepping out of like the cultural biases that that are embedded within the world that we live in, and how do you create and sustain a daily practice. How do you break free from the dominant culture that may have toxic elements that are keeping you sick? What is true masculinity? What does it take to actually be brave and strong and courageous? Is it that giant, muscular, going to the gym thing, or is it something different? And ultimately, why... Well, when it comes to wellness, that meditation and mental mastery might matter more than anything else. So without further ado, my interview with Bryan Kest, I hope you get as much value as I did out of it. And please leave comments and questions below. I'll leave a link to his book below and all of his material and websites. Enjoy. So, Bryan, thanks so much for coming on the show today. I guess one of the things I'd like to really start with is, when we were off camera, we were talking about, whether you're an environmentalist or not, or whether you care about nature or not, like you still got to deal with the same stresses of the mind and the same stressors of life. I don't know. I mean, there's actually a couple of things that are coming up for me right now. Is I'm a little worried about younger men today, because I feel like there's kind of a resurgence of this real aggressive ethos, and I know that's something that in particular you've figured out how to take that aggressive tendency in men and transform it into like the gentleman idea. So I don't know. Do you have a comment on that, or maybe we'll just start there and see where it goes?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually noticed that too, and a lot of that is, the role models that, our culture has for men. It's always been similar, but it does kind of feel like it's on steroids these days, that what a man is and how a man should look and how a man should be. And there is that emphasis there. And, there's that old psychological law that says the more you see something, the more you believe it, even if it's insane.
Yeah.
And if this is what the kids are seeing, it's definitely having a huge imprint on them.
Yeah.
But for me, it's all about expressing that um, that culture is not ultimately going to give you what you want.
Right.
So when you recognize that, when you see that, um, that's what kind of made me take a different path. The violence wasn't the answer. It just wasn't the answer. It just breeds more violence.
Yeah.
And basically that's what it's all about. It's about, you dominating someone or something, or you feeling like you need to dominate. And, that ain't happening because other people are not going to sit back and allow you to dominate them.
Right.
Right. And therefore you're going to have conflict. Right. And that conflict is not going to bring you what you want. It's not going to bring them what they want. You can go to a jail and you can talk, or a prison, and talk to everybody in there and, see where it got all those people. And that's where you're headed if that's your mentality. You're either gonna feel really bad about yourself because you're unable to dominate, or you're gonna deal with the ramifications of trying to dominate. So it's a dead end road, for pertaining to happiness,
Yeah.
pertaining to peace, pertaining to health.
Well,
It has nothing to do with being strong and independent because, you can be strong and independent. You can be your own man and you can be your own master, but, that doesn't have really anything to do with violence.
yeah.
And that's not saying that you shouldn't be able to defend yourself because, you should be able to stand up for yourself. But, you know, that's rarely necessary, when you're not looking for trouble.
Right. Yeah. There's this. So I think I tended, um, I didn't have a real scrappy youth. So, your youth is, you were raised in Detroit. Is that right? It's Detroit. Yeah. And
Outside, I was raised in suburban Detroit.
yeah.
It wasn't, I had more of a violent father than a violent environment.
Right. Right.
But it was because of my dad, the guns and the fights and everything I saw, that was kind of the direction that I valued, I thought was important, but yeah, I didn't grow up I was like in the suburbs.
Right.
It wasn't so aggressive out there.
Right. But you had that example of the violent or aggressive father. I very much didn't. I had sort of the passive father was what I had, and I'm just kind of curious, like, because there is something about, like you say, like, to stand up, and you said in your book that you in the end you didn't want to send your kids to private school because you thought it might have made them too soft to deal with the issues of the world. And so I've been kind of in this question right now of like, what, because that violence in a way kind of gave you a demon, an inner demon that you had to conquer. And then by conquer and harnessing that inner demon, then you drove to become sort of a masterful yogi and use that power and strength in the yogi. So I have this theory now, that we all kind of get our demons and we have to somehow harness them, like maybe you're too soft on yourself, maybe you're too hard on yourself. And so I guess I'm just kind of curious is, you've taught so many people. I'm sure there's people that don't challenge themselves enough. And then there's people that challenge themselves too much. Like, how do we navigate that internally? Like, what's some practices or some ideas that sort of ground you and how to find that optimum balance of challenge, given where you started?
Yeah, I don't think that we have to worry about any of that. Life is challenging. There's no ways about it. You come out of the womb. First of all, you're squeezed out of that vagina, and that's probably not a pleasant experience.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you get out, boom, gravity hits you, right, and bam, you're being like pressed into the earth, and then you got to use your strength. That's how you build muscles, right? You stand up against gravity. That's why the space people, like astronauts, they get all flaccid and stuff because there's no gravity, right? So life's always going to present you challenges. And in order to thrive, you're going to have to meet those challenges. You don't have to look for them. You don't have to force them on you. And as far as demons are concerned, the demons are going to be present that need to be present in order for you to become who you're becoming. Right. So, yeah, I had a violent father. That was, something that was presented to me to deal with. And that created hurdles that I needed to overcome. But Michael, you had a passive father, and I'm pretty certain you've had a lot of fucking hurdles that you've needed to
Oh yeah.
overcome,
Oh, for sure.
including all your physical
Yeah.
stuff. So, you don't have to look for it, yeah, I did worry about private school being a little soft and not preparing my kids. So yeah, as a father, I want to make sure that I'm preparing my kids as best as I can. But I can't protect my kids from everything, and they have their own they have their own demons, you could say, and wherever I end up putting them. Like one kid had he had a learning disability, so I had to keep him in private school.
Right.
But it's amazing. He's become the strongest of all my kids.
Right.
So, as much as we want to control things, I don't know for sure if we are completely in control. Actually, I know we're not.
Yeah.
So,
For sure.
there's that old saying of, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Yeah.
So we're not in control, and I don't think that you have to worry about that kind of stuff. You're going to be presented challenges; they're unavoidable, and dealing with those challenges is going to make you who you are.
And inside your yoga practice, though, and inside your health practice, you challenge yourself, right? So how does that how do you relate to that? Like, what is that? How's that fit into what you're saying?
Because there's things that I want to cultivate, right? Just like if you want to be a doctor, you got to go through medical school, or you want to be a lumberjack, you gotta you gotta go chop that pile of wood or whatever. There's things that I wanted to accomplish, and along the way of accomplishing them, you're presented challenges. If I want to feel better in my body, I have to stretch. And, it's not always comfortable to stretch. If I need to strengthen, as we were talking about earlier off camera with back problems, if I want to strengthen my back problems, you're not going to strengthen something that's not challenged. Mm-hmm. Right? Like we talked about coming out of the womb and dealing with the challenge of gravity is what makes the muscle strong. So, the challenge is going to be there for whatever you want to create or facilitate. And you got to deal with that challenge. But I do want to emphasize something, because some people think the challenge is pushing harder. How do you know, like on a societal level, when we started this conversation with the young men and what they have to deal with these days? How do you know the challenge isn't to be more gentle?
Yeah.
How do you know the challenge isn't to get out of your ego and back off a little
Right.
bit? How do you know the challenge isn't to be loving and accepting of yourself as you are?
Right.
Right? People think a challenge is like push, push, push.
Yeah.
How do you know challenge isn't going the other way? In a society as aggressive as we are in, pushing is not that hard. What would be hard is not pushing.
Right.
What would be hard is for a man to be more gentle.
Yeah.
Right? What would be hard is to be less reactive and more accepting. So when you say challenge yourself, there's an entire side of challenge that most people are not addressing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And that's the challenge that needs to be embraced in order for us to find violence, because aggression is our, did I say violence? In order for us to find peace, because aggression and violence are already on, overkill.
Right.
So in order for us to find violence, we actually have to go the other way. And that's going to be challenging, because it's challenging to go against our societal
Yeah.
program and to go against the societal
Yeah.
paradigm.
So that brings me to another really great, like, how can we, and how do you recommend, your students to develop that kind of inner courage to stand up against the violence, the aggression, the norms that we both agree are not healthy norms in our society. Like, how would you coach someone to try to develop that courage, because you got to stand against the grain and be really courageous? Like, that's, to me, would be really manly. But I don't think men are getting that message. Or, I mean, I don't want to just make it about men, but it takes courage, whoever you are.
Yeah, it. Well, yeah. I mean, exactly. This is not just about men because women have their own issues, and one of the big ones is vanity, and because of the trip that our society lays on ladies.
Yeah.
So women can do this exact same thing that men do, pertaining to their issues. It's just different issues, but issues are issues, and the way you deal with them is the same. At least in the yoga world. And I did mention in the book how like my first kind of dealing with my ego in yoga, is in Hawaii, and because in Hawaii, you get there's a lot of reverse racism,
Yeah.
right? So, you walk by a pack of Hawaiian men and, they're giving you what we call stink
Yeah.
eye, that
I
they're
got it.
looking
I
for a
remember
fight.
it.
And I actually remember, like, the urge to look back, and give them stink eye back and all that. And because that was macho, and that was me getting back at them. They're like attacking me with their eyes, and so I'm attacking back. This is before you come to blows, you're doing it with your
Yeah.
eyes, right? And then
Right.
it leads to something more
Right.
serious. And when I recognized that, going down the path of that mentality was not going to accomplish what I wanted within me and within the world, which is peace and love,
Yeah.
right? And harmony and getting along with people. Then, with that, then I had to make a decision. Do I engage in that or not? And it wasn't easy because my ego wanted to engage in
Right.
it, right? So then I had to be more dominated by my wisdom than my vanity or my
Yeah.
ego or my machismo.
Yeah.
And you know what and sometimes I succeeded, and then I also had to feel bad. Like I had to, like, I kind of felt weak, in a way, because I was kind of running away, in a
Yeah.
sense. Um, and then I had to deal with that, and sometimes I failed, and I was aggressive back, and and I had to accept that I failed, and this is like, it's like anything. It's like, it's a work in progress. It's like you're developing new muscles of humility and gentleness. And it's like, being an addict and falling off the wagon and getting back on the wagon,
Right.
and you're constantly working on developing this, and you're working on it because in your heart it's the right way. And eventually you get good at it. You actually get good at it. And then those things become less of an issue. Quantum physics now they discovered a law that, it's yoga. The yogis always knew this law. You might call it karma. Quantum physics says like attracts like. That means you draw to you that of which you are, right? So as you stop participating more and more in that mentality, those aggressive situations start presenting themselves less and less in your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, it all works in the direction you want it to work, but it is a work in progress. I don't know. Did I answer the question
Yeah.
there, or
No,
no?
you totally did. And what the next question that pops up for me is, you know, um, we all, as much as, so I was reviewing the 8 limbs of yoga, and non-attachment and withdrawal of the senses. Like, I mean, that's all great. And I remember when I started Vipassana, like I literally felt that start to happen to me, like on a big level, like where I kind of didn't want anything for a little while. And it actually kind of frightened me. And because I still wanted to have kids, and I wanted a house and a ranch, and I wanted a bunch of stuff, and I know kind of the path of the yogi is to kind of let go of stuff. But the truth is we through the seasons of our life, like most everybody out there, most of the men and the people out there and the women out there are going to want to have what they're going to want to have. And, and I think we need to learn how to temper that and be, a little bit more modest about that. But I think the great fear is most people, when they hear this, will be like, oh, if I really stop driving or start looking away and feel that inner stuff, that I am going to be weak and that I'm not going to be able to get what I want. So I guess if you could speak to, like, your life is a great example. This work in progress, you've been developing these skills of nonviolence, of acceptance, of non-attachment, of generosity your whole life, and you have a great life. And you have a lot of the stuff that men and women are going to want. You've obviously had lots of challenges, like we all do. You can't get away from the challenges. But I think people need to hear that if you go down this path, you can still have a lot of great stuff that you want. So can you speak to that and what that looks like for you?
Sure. What it sounds like from you is you're attached to being non-attached, right? That's what it sounds like to
I
me.
mean, I don't know about that. I think I'm okay with being attached. I feel like the practices tell me, like, if I read the books and the spiritual stuff, they all say, like, don't be attached. I'm okay with being attached to my wife and my child and my land. I do think it causes me some stress, but I mean, yeah, keep going down that thread. So yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't like accusing you of anything, but the concept that you were talking
Yes.
about, still having all these desires and how that seems to be against the 8 limbs, because the 8 limbs is saying non-attachment, and, there's all these desires that you have. But I think the first thing we have to do is to not be to not be attached to not having those desires,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, like, allow yourself to be natural. You
Yeah.
are what you are,
Yeah.
right? Don't be attached to it being any other way.
Yeah.
That's where you find peace, is when you're okay with who you are and where you're at. And if that's what you're wanting, then that's fine. So, and it doesn't even mean that you're attached to it, right? Because there's probably a lot of things that you've wanted, like maybe to not have spinal problems, right? And you didn't get what you wanted. And you're okay with that too, right? You've let
Mm-hmm.
go. This is the way it is,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm dealing with these health issues,
Yeah.
and so you can go towards the direction that you want to go, whatever you're desiring. Go for your desires, but at the same time, you have to accept what ends up presenting itself, because sometimes your desires will manifest and sometimes they won't. That's how you find peace, right? Go for what you want,
Right.
but accept what happens.
Right.
That's the balancing act,
Right.
right? That's number one. And number two is, when you're ready to let go of those other things, you will,
Yeah.
right? When you let go of those other things, you
Yeah.
will. And you know what? I can see a situation where you do have a family, but you're also not attached.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like you're following your desire, but you're a nature guy, right? And you see the perfection of nature,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Correct.
You see how the seasons change, and the plants grow, and the rain comes and feeds the soil, and the plants grow, and then the deer eats the plants, and the deer poops, and the poop feeds the soil, and you see the rhythm. Nature has a rhythm, and you are part of that rhythm. You are nature. One of humans'
Amen.
greatest mistakes is to think that we're separate from
Yeah,
that.
100%.
You know, we are 100% part of that rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's nothing you could ever do that's not nature manifesting perfectly,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you don't have to second guess yourself. It's all going down perfectly, and you have to trust that process.
So,
And, okay.
I think what comes up for me, and what I'm trying to, I'm hoping that the younger men and women who are watching this will get is that you can have all these desires, because I'm totally, I love exactly what you're saying, and I'm totally 100% on board with that. And I even think that, when I say demons, I think these quote unquote negative traits or emotions can really, like you say, we get that they come out of us, and they help us along the path. And I guess I just think what I'm noticing in society today is like this kind of reversion to um, I can't have what I want, and go for like being a more compassionate, enlightened person. It's kind of like I have to. It's like the nice guy thing, right? There's this theory that if you're a nice guy, you're not going to get anything you want, and so in a lot of ways, I guess what I'm trying to speak to is, 25-year-old Mike, who didn't do good with the ladies, who, was a really nice guy. And it took me a long time, I'm 56 now. It took me a long time to figure out how to do all this stuff that we're talking about, and have self-confidence, and realize that I could get what I wanted. Um, and so I guess I'm curious is like, how could you help someone, like, let's say a young man like me who's 25, who's afraid? Because that's kind of what I noticed. Like, I was afraid that if I gave up this aggressive, like, I'm gonna go get it, I'm gonna be a bad boy or whatever, and it wasn't really who I was, so it never worked. But who's afraid to really embrace this path, because I think I'm gonna have to let go of all this other stuff that I want to have.
Well, what makes you think that being a bad boy and being aggressive works? Look around you. You think things are working?
No, I mean, I agree with
It
you.
doesn't
Like, yeah,
work. I think everybody's feeding into an image. They think it works.
yeah,
You look at like, I don't know, whoever you're trying to emulate, whether it's like The Rock, or whether it's Elon Musk, or whether it's, and you read their autobiography and how they work 24/7,
right,
and they were so aggressive, and they fired everybody, and they weren't nice bosses.
right,
And if you read Steve Jobs memoirs, I mean, everybody says he was a total
right,
asshole. And like, is that what you have to be successful in business or whatever? And but how do you know these people are
right,
happy? How do you know these people really do have what they want? You think it's just because you got money? That's part of the program that's jammed down
right,
your throat.
right,
It's like this whole social media thing. That's why the female teenage suicide rate has doubled in the past 10
right.
years.
Yeah,
Right? What's happened in the past 10 years? It's social media.
yeah,
It's because these girls are getting these images put in front of them, and they think it's real.
yeah,
It's real. Everybody they're seeing is not happy. Even listen to this. I had this one lady, multi millionaire, zillionaire, right? She posted a picture of herself, right? Like the ultimate life, right? She's sitting by a pool eating chocolate with a glass of wine in her hand at some five-star resort. Like,
yeah,
that's what we all should be. This is the pinnacle of life,
right,
right? Like, she made it or whatever. Her life's so great. That evening, she tried to commit suicide
right,
after she made the post. She didn't post that she tried to commit suicide,
mm-hmm.
but she posted that image. This is what we see.
Yeah,
So, why do kids really, why do they think they have to be aggressive? Because that's the way these other people were to find what our society calls
yeah,
success. I thought success is being
yeah,
happy. I thought
right,
success is being loving and accepting yourself, because without that, you have stress, and stress. But they're telling us right now, stress is the foundation of 95% of all physical disease is coming from mental
yeah,
stress. There's, Steve Jobs died of cancer at a young age. Okay, I bet he would give all his money to be
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I think that we have to create a new paradigm of what success
Right.
is. And you're doing it in your own way, living off the land and doing stuff that in your way. And, you found contentment and peace.
Mm-hmm.
You pulled yourself away from the rat race. You dealt with your fears. You maybe had to deal with that little voice in your head said, oh, you're a failure, you didn't make it in LA or whatever. And you said, I'm not buying into that.
Mm-hmm.
Most people buy into that little
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah.
They're dominated, and society doesn't help. Society promotes that little voice.
So can I interject? So that brings up a great point. Like how I love, and I'm very much on the same page with you. I love how you have been consciously deprogramming yourself from the media and the culture and all the things that we get. And I think, back in the 80s and 90s when we were dealing with the media brainwashing that we were getting, oh my God, it was so much gentler, but it was still all pervasive, and it still totally catapulted us in a particular direction. I mean, do you have what's your thoughts on how to support people these days, given the difficulty of unplugging from the cultural just brainwash that's hitting you all the time?
That's a really good question. Like, just for instance, I took away one of my daughter's cell phone. One of my daughters, I took her cell phone away because of, I don't know, she was being punished or grounded. I forget what happened, but and we're in a conundrum right now because you know that's how kids communicate with each other. So my punishment was to take away her cell phone, but I wasn't trying to take away her friendships. And I inadvertently was taking away her friendships because all of her friends use that friggin' cell phone to connect and interact and all that. And we really got ourselves in a conundrum. And we have to, I think on a societal level, we have to realize that, and we have to address this issue. It's so crazy to me that the suicide rate has doubled for teenagers, and us parents aren't joining together and doing something. Because if we all took the kids' cell phones away, then the kids would be forced to communicate in a different way, kind of like me and you communicated with our friends when we were
Yeah.
kids, right? But individually, I'm sure there's some benefit to me taking her cell phone away, but it doesn't really work on the individual level, really, even though individually we all need to do it. So we are in a conundrum. I do, I have a program at poweryoga.com, and I run it 2-3 times a year. It's called the Weight Loss and Wellness Program. And one of the things we do is we do take a media fast, right? Because it's so much, we are being bombarded. These corporations, man, everybody so badly wants to be rich because everybody's so programmed to think that's when they'll be happy, right? That people are willing to sacrifice their morals and integrity, or they rationalize why what they're doing is okay. My father used to say to me, Bryan, you can rationalize anything, right? You can literally rationalize to yourself why anything would be appropriate. You can convince yourself, but so people convince themselves why it's appropriate. But these corporations actually hire psychologists to make you feel so inadequate about yourself that you have a desire to buy their product. Like, what I'm trying to say is we are being so manipulated by the media. And we need to turn that shit off. Part of deep reprogramming yourself, part of it is pulling yourself away from the program that's hurting you, and then developing your own program, right? So, meditation for me is me reprogramming myself, whether I'm doing
Right.
the Vipassana, or whether I'm doing the meditation of gratitude, or whether I'm doing the meditation of compassion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what I'm trying to do is develop qualities that I feel are powerful and that I feel are most helpful to me and everybody in society. But I also want to de emphasize the qualities that are hurting me in
Mm-hmm.
society. Right? And a big help to that is unplugging to the degree that we
Yeah.
can. Okay, now, yeah, you know what? You can use your text on your cell phone to communicate with people, but that doesn't mean you have to read the feeds,
Yeah.
right? That doesn't mean you have to read the news.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, so finding that balance. And Michael, it's not. This is not easy. I know everything I'm saying is not easy, but if the goal is wellness, what's the choice?
Yeah.
The whole conversation me and you have had is that nothing's easy.
Yeah.
Like, that's life.
Right.
Me and you growing up in a tech-free society, we still dealt with our pains and
Right.
challenges. This generation's dealing with
Yeah.
theirs. It's
Yeah.
not easy.
And it kind of brings me back to what you always preach, and it's just, I kind of want to underline one thing about what I love about your teaching, and I think really really worked for me, is that I've always loved like all religions and all spiritual practices and all wellness practices, and I've always tried to bring them together. And I know you've done a very similar thing in your world. And what I'm hearing you say is, what sparks for me is like, the meditation practice and the yoga practices are reprogramming. That's one way we reprogram ourselves. We're kind of swimming upstream right now in this society because of all of the constant bombardment of, they're taking, like you say, taking advantage of our desire to be accepted by others, and this bias that we think that happiness is over there rather than in here and in here. But anyways, what I'm feeling and hearing as a thread is that thread of moderation, of the middle path, and that it's just everywhere. It's like, I can watch the news, but what I've been thinking lately is like, I'll watch the news maybe once a week, maybe for 15 minutes in a digest, and that's all I need. And I'll kind of know enough of what's going on. I don't have to do any of the feeds or any of that other stuff. And I just feel like kids today, or everybody today, really needs to insulate themselves. Like, I think that from my perspective is, I heard it once said by somebody recently that in today's era, kind of more than ever, wellness requires an asceticism. Like, you have to unplug if you want a certain degree of wellness. You just can't stay fully engaged, or there's gonna be dis-ease. It's just not really possible in the technological world that we're in. And I don't know. That's my take on what you just said. I want to hear what that sparks in you.
I don't know if that's true or not, but it kind of sounds true. I mean, I can't think of another way to counter that program that's being jammed down our throat by a culture that's more interested in us buying their products than actually being well,
Mm-hmm.
than to not allow that culture to implant its program in our head. And unplugging seems to be a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Another side of it for me is also um, being accepting of the way it is. All I can do is, speak to people like you and try to put this message out on your podcast and other podcasts and books. And, I go to yoga class right now. I teach 3 times a week, and I try to reinforce this message into the people in my classes. And, website, Instagram, whatever, all these places that I can contact people. You can be on social media. I tell people that, there's plenty of people out there on social media, kind of like you right now, that are doing good things.
Yeah.
You have to be also discerning about what you put in, because, there are places on the internet that are just as benevolent as these other places that are malevolent.
Yeah.
And, you need to be discerning about it. But as far as what I was about to say is, you know, for me, I also have to be accepting of the way things are. You know, I'll give you a little story about when my son was a little young, like really young, like, I don't know, 5, 6. You know, I remember he burnt himself, right? And I remember feeling really happy that he burned himself. Good burn, too. It was really good. And I was really happy because, you know, as a parent, my job is to protect him,
Mm-hmm.
right? And, you know, I know that fire is dangerous. And now I know that he
Yeah,
knows
right.
fire is dangerous.
Yeah, right.
Right? And so now when I leave the house, I'm not worried about him playing with the stove or playing with matches because he knows fire is dangerous. In other words, you know, sometimes you have to burn yourself to wake up.
Yeah.
Right? And so when I look at the planet right now and all that's happening is, you know, I look at it like we're destroying ourselves perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because me and we were just talking a little bit ago about the perfection of nature, right? We were talking
Yeah.
about the perfection of nature and how everything's happening perfectly. So can't we say right now we're destroying the planet perfectly?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
maybe we have to make things so
Yeah.
bad that it actually wakes us up to
Yeah.
what the fuck we're
Yeah.
doing. And maybe that's the way we learn, like the child burns himself, right?
That's so true.
Do you know that science has looked at the crust of the earth and they've seen that the earth has been totally, utterly destroyed like 9 different
Yeah, right.
times. Like almost all life on
Yeah.
planet Earth was wiped out
Yeah.
with ice age, this, that, the other, right? So can we argue that us humans are destroying the planet perfectly?
Yeah.
Like we're doing our job perfectly, right?
Yeah.
And maybe I don't know for sure, but maybe I know me and you are doing the best that we can do
Mhm.
to avoid
Yeah.
that because we are following our passion and our desire.
Yeah.
But along with following that passion and desire, we also have to be accepting of what is.
Yeah.
That's the great balancing act. So let's say we're destroying the planet perfectly, and maybe things got to get really bad
Yeah.
before they get better
Yeah.
because that's the way humans learn. This
Mhm.
is the planet of
Yeah.
challenge. Through challenge, humans grow.
Right.
Maybe this is the challenge, and
Yeah.
maybe this is going to propel us to eventually protecting nature,
Yeah.
if there's anything left to protect. You know?
If there's anything left, yeah. But you know, I think that's great. I was thinking about trying to find someone who was like an expert in climate anxiety, but I think you just kind of nailed it because I have friends around me, and I'm always telling them because I'm at peace with it, and you know I forget what it is, but there's some Hindu philosophy where they talk about the life and the death cycles of civilizations, but I love what you're saying because it kind of gave me another piece of that.
Those are the yugas. The
The
yugas.
yugas, yeah,
The yugas. Right now, we're in the Kali
yeah, the Kali
Yuga,
Yuga.
which is the time
So
of
it's the
darkness.
death time, you know, and I personally I think the Western culture is like disassociated from the death cycle. Like I love to grow mushrooms. I had a mushroom out I was going to show you. I've been growing mushrooms, and what I love about mushrooms is they're the positive aspect of they embody the positive aspect of the death cycle. And so yeah, I personally, like for me, I was, you know, I went through my pain and my crying and seeing that the wonderful, beautiful nature that I loved was just being destroyed all around me at a more and rapid pace. And then I just was like, oh, okay, we're in the Kali death cycle, and I have to make peace with that. And that doesn't mean that I participate in it and that I promote ignorance, but I don't get you know all bound up about it because you
You
know
trust it. You trust it.
I don't, you know, that now you brought that to me. This is kind of new for me. Like, okay, I'm trusting in the process. Okay, that's beautiful.
Well,
Thank you
you
for
just
that.
got done saying you see the perfection of
Yeah.
nature, so how can you not trust
Well,
it?
you know, the mind is a complicated place. We can believe all kinds of contradictory things. So I think you just made it a little more clear for me. So thank you for that. And I hope this makes it clear for others too that no matter what's happening around us, the destruction of the planet, the destruction of civilization, the destruction of democracy, it's all unfolding perfectly, and but that doesn't give us the right or the reason to not do the best that we can in the world. And that's, I think, what you were saying is the path that works, right? If I practice wisdom and self-study and taking care of my body and taking care of others, I am going to be happier, and I'm going to have more of what I really want than what society tells me that I want. Anyways, love your thoughts to go from there.
Yeah, that to me is the great balancing act, which is, and there's an old Christian prayer, I think it's called the Serenity prayer, that says, God, give me the ability to change what I can change and accept what I can't.
Yeah.
So if your passion is Mother Earth and supporting her, and it's mine too, and your passion is healing on every level, then you do everything you can to do that, but you also be accepting of the end result of it. That's how you find ultimate peace, when you follow your passion, but you accept the results.
Yeah.
Right? You follow your passion, you're doing everything that you desire to do,
Yeah.
so you're fulfilling your desires, but at the same time, you're accepting what is.
Yeah, can I riff on top of that? It makes me think of
Your podcast.
I think it's the Bhagavad Gita and Arjuna and Krishna, and the teaching of like just putting all of your, and Buddhism too, putting all of your focus on your action and your what you're doing, like the energy that you're putting into stuff, and just completely let go of the results. And I know that you're a living example of that. And I try, and I accept that sometimes I fail, sometimes I succeed, sometimes I stay really attached. But the more I do that, the more I just put the effort into doing and living and being, and let go of the results, I'm way happier. And seems like the results actually get better too. But that's not the point. I'm just curious of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's exactly what we practice every day in yoga class. All you can do is touch yourself with love and care, but you can't control like the results of what's going to happen. The objective of yoga is to care for yourself. It's not to change yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, so you're taking care as best as you can, but the change will happen as it's supposed to, as nature intends.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a certain letting go, and I go back to I go back to religions, like to Christianity in a sense, because not that this is I'm Christian in any way, shape, or form, or any organized religion, but there in the world there's they right now they say there's 5 blue zones.
Yep.
Right?
Very familiar.
Blue zones are the areas of the world where people live the longest. Yep. And one of the commonalities of this is that like one of the blue zones is actually Loma Linda, California.
Yeah, familiar.
And it's the largest population of Seventh-day evangelists in the world, right? So they have a big effect on this blue zone, and part of that religion is they have faith, right? Faith, right? Faith means giving your power up to a higher power.
Yeah.
Right? Like understanding that, nature, you could call it God, but you could also call it the universe. You could call it nature, right? That nature has its own cycle, right? It has its own path. And so, you can't control that. So giving, doing the best you can and then giving it up allows you to be at peace with the results.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what faith has. And you know what? And I have faith. It's not a Christian faith.
Yeah.
It's not a religious faith. But I have faith that the universe knows what it's doing.
Yeah.
Right? And so and part of what the universe knows what it's doing is the passion that it's instilled in me.
That's great.
And my passion is to heal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But so that's what I do. But, I can't control if healing will occur.
Right.
And actually, what is healing? Because you know what, me and you, like, we have this vision of healing, of like, oh, the air being clean and the animals thriving and plastic pollution disappearing. That's just me and you.
Yeah.
We don't see the broad
Yeah.
picture. How do you know plastic pollution isn't part of the healing?
Yeah.
Because you have to die before you're reborn. You just talked about it with the mushrooms.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Right?
that's
So
great. It's wonderful, and I love what you're saying, because it really makes one of the things that I strive to be is to question my own assumptions, and just like you're right, like, how do I know that this vision that I see of this beautiful, in my mind, a beautiful world, like, that it would actually be beautiful? Maybe there's some ugliness in there that I just couldn't see, and I wanted to actually riff also on the faith part. For a long time, it was very difficult for me, the whole concept of God and faith. But my mother she was a New Age Christian. My dad was kind of like agnostic or atheist or something. I don't really know exactly what his spiritual beliefs were. But recently, I have friends who've turned to Christianity in a more dogmatic way, and I've had to think about it a lot. I've had to think about, like, our Judeo-Christian origins in the culture that we're in, because there's a lot of that wrapped in there, and people really get a lot out of this idea of surrendering their life to the will of God. And I never understood that, and I think what you're saying is the way I finally feel like I understand it, and it's what you're saying. It's that I'm letting not myself be the center. It's like Buddhism and the yoga and everything, but just letting the center be outside of me. Like, I don't know the right way. I'm not supposed to be in charge. It's not all supposed to be about me. And, but that was a process. That was really kind of like, I think one of the hardest things that we do is to try to, and it's never really gone. I mean, we always have ourself, and we got to eat, and we have our desires and stuff, but at least to be trying to center ourselves a little bit outside of ourselves kind of has started to give me that level of peace that I think maybe you already have, or you're talking about, or I'd love to hear what you think about what I just said.
yeah, well, you're just basically articulating what I just said.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I feel like, there's something that's greater than us that we are part of, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is us.
Yeah.
It is us. We are part of it. But it's much more than just us.
Yeah.
It's everybody and everything.
Yeah.
But that's us too.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, understanding that there is, like, the universe knows what it's doing. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we somehow it became, with no doing of ours, it became, and
Yeah.
it is
Right.
of no doing of
Yeah.
us, and we are here, no thanks to ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it knows what it's doing,
Yeah.
and trusting that just gives you less stress.
Yeah.
It gives you a sense of peace, and that's what that's a very big commonality of the blue zones.
Yeah.
Along with making the effort to care for yourself,
Yeah.
because another aspect of the blue zones is the diet they eat. Right? They all eat, most of them eat purposely, like the Seventh-day Adventists, or just coincidentally because of their culture, like the Okinawans, and the Costa Ricans.
Yeah.
Right? They're eating a very pure diet,
Yeah.
a diet that's just more healthy than this fucking, can I say all these cuss words
That's
on your
fine. Yeah.
this fucking shit that our culture is promoting, these
Totally.
processed fats and these sugars and these, all the chemicals and the foods and the colorings, and I mean, they're putting cancer producing colorings in the meats and the meat counter so the meat looks pretty, so you'll buy it. I mean, everything's been tainted, so someone's going to make a profit off you. I mean, it's crazy, but so most of these people are eating a pure diet too. So there's the effort to care for yourself and the surrendering to what is this beautiful balance, right? And that's yoga
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
right? That's yoga too. That's the serenity prayer. That might be Christianity without the dogma,
Right.
because there is a lot of dogma in it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, what is the pure teachings? What are the pure teachings without the religion?
I love, you said that in your book, and I'm 100% on the same page with you. It's, the founders of the religions, like, they had a message to share, but it gets all lost in the future. Yeah, there it is. There you go.
You guys, if you're wondering what book he's talking
There
about, the
it is. There's all my
autobiography of an
notes I
American.
took on it. It's great. Good read. So it really, and I have to say, segue back to just to sidetrack onto the book there, like, for anybody who's listened who has dabbled in yoga or didn't dabble in yoga or whatever, it really, so, I've been on the path for many, many years. It really brought it back to me, it really, like, oh yeah, right. And now I feel like, oh, now here's my next phase of my yogic adventure that I'm on in the later years of my life. And and I love just what I was starting to say before was, I think that, like, again, maybe I'm repeating myself, but, Jesus said, don't judge, and the Buddha said, like, take the middle path and master your mind. And, and I think the Islamic teaching is to love one another, and then, so I feel like I guess one of my intentions for this talk was to just kind of demystify yoga. It doesn't have to be, it's not Hindu, right? It's just an organization. It's a way that you can practice wellness, like full spiritual wellness.
Yoga is pure Christianity in its purest
Oh,
form.
that's,
It's Buddhism in its purest
yeah,
form,
yeah,
because they're all saying the same exact thing.
yeah,
You just said it.
yeah,
Jesus said, "Let he who has not sinned cast the first stone."
yeah,
In other words, do not judge. In other words, don't participate in a malevolent
yeah,
mentality. Right? Buddha said moderation. If we understood the concept of moderation, there'd be no such thing as global warming.
yeah.
Right? Like the middle
Or
path.
obesity.
Like, right? And the Jews gave us the 10 commandments. Like, look at those 10 commandments. They're the most beautiful
Mm-hmm,
things. Right? But they're all talking about a mental state.
mm-hmm.
They're all talking about dealing with your mind and strengthening benevolent qualities. Look at the greatest people who ever walked on planet Earth. We all will agree, right? Mother Teresa, Jesus Christ, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Gautama the Buddha, Mahatma Gandhi, right? Whatever, all the greatest people, right? What they all said the same thing. Try to strengthen the benevolent qualities of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus said, don't judge. Buddha said, moderation. Mother Teresa, compassion. Gandhi, nonviolence. Mandela, forgiveness. Martin Luther King, equality. None of them said you need to stick your legs behind your head or grow your bicep bigger than your head, right?
Yeah,
None of them, they all said the same
yeah,
thing. So, that's yoga.
yeah,
Yoga's saying the same thing.
yeah.
If they're all, but these benevolent qualities don't just appear.
Right,
They need to be developed.
right.
Benevolent qualities like gratitude or compassion are the same things as
Yeah.
muscles.
Well,
Like if you use them, they develop, and
yeah,
if you don't use them, they atrophy. There's nowhere in our culture that supports this
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Everybody's running around like a chicken with their head cut
yeah,
off, trying to accumulate more, thinking that
yeah,
all the great benefits going to come from outer
yeah.
things. And all these great beings, though people that we put on a pedestal, are telling us something different, and we're discarding their message.
I forgot what I was going to say. I wanted to just look at my notes just to make sure I asked you all the stuff that I kind of came up with here. We really did cover most of the things I was thinking about. Oh, I know what it was. So you've had a daily practice for many years, right? I have struggled most of my life with my daily practice. I mean, I have. So I was thinking about what you said about the culture. I don't really consider myself having very much willpower. I've always done much better in community and around other people, and I think that's one of the reasons I've sort of vibe with this sort of indigenous small community vibe. Many people do. Most people do, I think. But so I've had men's groups for the past, I don't know, 20 years. And I kind of tell them what I want to be doing in terms of my daily practice. And they sort of help me support myself, help me keep me on track so that I do that. And you know, you're a yoga teacher and you have your own way of keeping yourself to do your daily practice. I think it would be really helpful for people listening if you had any tips about how to maintain it or to come back to it. It makes me think of Goenka. You know, he's always saying, start again, start again. It's like, I mean, I get that's kind of the ultimate message is you just got to if you screw up, start again. But I don't know. Do you have any specifics or just generalized ideas about developing and maintaining a daily practice?
Well, believe it or not, that's been my greatest challenge too, is just the consistency of a daily
Yeah.
practice. And, um, I've discovered what works for me, and I don't know if me and you have the same roadblock. So,
Right.
not quite sure if it'll work for you, but the reason I had trouble with a daily practice was due to my aggressiveness.
Mm.
Right? It's like when my daily practice was, very painful,
Mm.
and I had a lot of expectations,
Mm.
and going into a daily practice that where I'm going to push myself aggressively, where I'm going to be trying to change myself
Mm.
instead of take care of myself,
Right.
where I'm going to be way more aggressive and forceful than I'm going
Yeah.
to be gentle.
Yeah.
That was quite intimidating.
Yeah.
And, I would naturally get really hungry right before. So, I'd have all these excuses not to do it, or I'd think of a million things I have to
Yeah.
do. Oh, I got to go out and do my gardening, or, I just wouldn't do it, So, um, you know, now, like, I go into my practice, first of all, with absolutely no agenda what I'm going to do. I'm just said, I'm going to get into child's pose and I'm going to take 5 deep breaths. And if I want to get up after that and leave, then I'm going to get up and leave, period. And usually what I do is I get on my yoga mat, I take 5 deep breaths in child's pose, I stretch my arms out, I tuck my toes under, I come up to down dog for 5 breaths. Then I go back down to child's pose.
Mm-hmm.
Then I come back to down dog, right? And I might do that 10
Yeah.
times. And
Right.
then I'm just starting to feel a little bit better. And then from the next down dog, I'll drop one knee to the ground and bring the other arm up and I'll do a side stretch. And,
Yeah.
and I, and I slip in really slow and I'm really gentle. And before I know it, I'm practicing for 20, 30 minutes. And then I'm thinking of all these other poses I want to do. And I got an hour and a half practice going, but I went into it with no expectations. And I made an effort not to be aggressive, right? Because you have to understand something. I don't know if your issues are the same as mine, but pain is your sacred partner in this life, right? Your sacred partner in this life is your body. And your body speaks to you in the most succinct language on planet Earth. It's called sensation. And pain is your sacred partner saying, please stop.
Yeah.
Right? But you know what? So your yoga practice shouldn't hurt.
Mm.
It should feel good. It shouldn't feel bad. It should feel right. It shouldn't feel wrong. What fool seeks pain?
Mm.
But we come from a culture that teaches us no pain, no gain. We
Mm.
come from a culture that teaches us more is better.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is no pain, no injury.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is more is the same as not enough. It's an extreme.
Mm-hmm.
How about something in
Yeah. Yeah.
between, which is called gentleness?
Yeah.
Right? And when I started understanding the concept of gentleness, and when I stopped laying a trip on myself, about how much I should do, I started to look forward to getting on that mat every day because it was like a massage instead of a violent workout.
Right.
More push. And
Yeah.
there was a lot of internal resistance to that because deep down inside, I knew that was wrong.
Mm.
My body knew that was wrong. Listen, if you go out into the society and you do something to someone and they tell you to stop and you don't stop, that's called rape
Right.
or assault and battery
Yeah.
or breaking and entering, right? Someone says don't go in and you go in anyways.
Yeah.
That's the way most people exercise.
Yeah. Can I add one thing to that? I love what you're saying, and I just was thinking about my personal practice and the expectations that I put on myself. And it's interesting. I actually stopped. I was doing a 20-minute meditation in the morning, and I stopped. I replaced it with some exercise bike because I felt I needed some cardio, and I have been pretty good about not having an agenda around my practice. But what I noticed, what you said, that was that I felt that meditation wasn't enough. And so I kind of stopped doing it. And then I sort of stopped everything. I've been fairly good, but I stopped. And what I'm pointing at is that there's lots of ways we can have expectation, even just like sitting down to meditate. For me in my mind, I didn't really put it together that I was having an expectation that I should be getting more of a physical workout. So that's one thing I wanted to say was like, thanks for making me see, and hopefully the people who are listening, that there's lots of ways that you can put expectations on yourself. And I do think that I share some of your aggressiveness. Like, I think my expectations and aggressiveness are there too. But I also think I'm a little bit different in the sense that I can be too gentle with myself. And then if I don't actually touch, I think that there's kind of a distinction between a good pain and a bad pain, like I haven't used that in a while and it's kind of achy, but it hurts, but it's not like I'm jamming myself, So,
Well, there's a difference between pain and discomfort.
Okay, so there you go.
I didn't say avoid discomfort. Yeah. Pain is your body saying, please stop. Yeah. That should be avoided. Yeah. Life already has enough pain. You don't have to seek it.
Yeah.
Okay? Discomfort's different. Think about a masseuse digging their fingers into a knot in your body. Yeah. It hurts, but it hurts good, not bad. Yeah. It feels right. It doesn't feel wrong. Yeah. Sharp pain, excruciating pain, right? Pushing yourself to total fatigue. Yeah. For what? For what? Yeah. So you can grow your bicep bigger than your head and crush people with your bare hands? Yeah. Like, why do you want to overdevelop yourself? It's all ego and vanity, and it's just, it's just crazy. Yeah. But, also meditation is confrontational. So it makes sense that you want to go ride your bike because then you don't have to deal with your shit, right? Yeah. Meditation is confrontational. You just sit there and you keep trying, but I wouldn't recommend not trying. No. And then, going, bike riding instead, because that's a different thing. And one last thing, the oldest living animals on the planet breathe the slowest, not the fastest. Mm-hmm. So what is all this cardio shit? Can someone explain it to me? Why would you want to create a situation where you're raising your heart rate and breathing faster if your life is actually a number of breaths?
Interesting.
Right? Because the oldest living, the dog is dead in 10 years. Right? Mm. The elephant, which breathes slower, lives to 60, 70 years. Mm. The human breathes slower, 80 years. Mm-hmm. The sea turtle the sea turtle slower, 180 years. Yeah. The land tortoise, 300 years. Like why would you if you want to live as long as possible, feeling as amazing as possible, why would you ever make an effort to raise your heart rate to such a degree? Mm. It's because... Why? Because you want to burn the calories to hide the fact that you can't control your tongue? Mm-hmm. A lot of people are doing all this cardio stuff to cover up the fact that they're overeating. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? To burn calories. Yeah. You would never need to burn any calories.
I think I do that for sure. I mean, that brings up a great next point. It's like, I don't know, what would be your take on, because I feel, for me, I think my biggest addiction is probably food, like more than anything else. I think I used to drink too many IPAs every now and then, but I don't really drink anymore. But food, for sure, I definitely know that that's a place where I would struggle. That would be my next sort of practice. So, and I know I mean, the last time I saw you, we 25 years ago, we went out to lunch and you had your last meal at noon. That's what they do in Vipassana. I was wondering if you could, share, like, how has your relationship with food evolved? What are you doing around food? What do you think is the best way to relate to food these days?
Well, first of all, I mean, we don't even have to go into, eating clean, because that's the priority.
Yeah, for
There's
sure.
there's two major things about food. Number one is cleanliness, putting as minimal amount of toxins in you as possible. But something just as poisonous as toxins, additives to food, is overeating. So overeating is toxic, and you can poison yourself on tofu. I mean, I hate tofu anyway, so I'm not going to eat any anyways. But you get my point. Even things that are supposed to be healthy are poisonous if they're done in excess.
Right.
It's like any yoga pose. If you go too far, it's no longer beneficial. It's harmful, right? The key is gentleness or moderation, and that's the key in diet. There was a great, when you were in LA. And when we were doing our teachers training, maybe she was involved in our teachers training, because I used to bring her into my teachers training to add the Iyengar aspect of my training. It was a lady named Lisa Walford.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I studied with her for sure.
Yeah. Well, Lisa Walford has a father named Dr. Roy Walford, who's a professor of gerontology at UCLA. Gerontology is the science of aging. And he was also the person who headed up that, I don't know if you remember that thing called the biosphere.
Oh,
where
yeah.
a bunch of people lived in a bubble for 2 years or something, right? That was his project.
Wow.
So he did a study with rats, and he did the same study with monkeys. He got the same results with both. They're doing the same studies with humans, but our life is so long that, the studies will take much longer. Although up to this point, they're getting the exact same results as rats and monkeys. And the study they had a control group of rats and monkeys that they put on a calorie restricted diet. And they let the other group basically eat what they wanted. I think the calorie restricted diet, they were given 30% less food, right? The group on a calorie restricted diet, lived 30% longer and had 80% less age-related disease just from eating less.
Yeah.
Just from eating less. You ask me what I'm doing. I eat one meal a day. That's it.
One meal a day.
One meal a day, and I don't snack.
So are you?
That's my diet, right? I used to, when I knew you, I ate 2 meals a day. I would have breakfast and lunch, like you said. After lunch, I wouldn't eat anything. Right? Now at my age, I don't feel like I need 2 meals a day. I'm fine with 1 meal a day.
Wow.
I've been doing this for a while. I feel great. You want to make sure that you're getting everything you need in that 1 meal, but I eat 1 meal a day, and it's so weird to me how our macho culture, wants everybody to be bigger, stronger.
Yeah.
It's so antithetical to health that they don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, listen, there's a universal law. Every viewer that is going to watch your podcast understands that law in some way. And that law says the harder you are on anything, the faster you destroy it. That's universal law. The more weight your skeleton has to carry, the faster you're going to wear it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, how can you take gentleness, which is another word for moderation, into the amount of weight that you're carrying around with you every day?
Right.
How can you take gentleness, which is another word for moderation, which is the key to every healthy relationship on earth, gentleness? How can you take that into diet, moderation, not eating too
Yeah.
much, not eating too little either, right? So we all have to work out for ourselves what we need. But I would say, considering that 70% of Americans are overweight and 50% of them are considered obese, I think it's something that we need to look at very clearly.
Yeah, for sure. And did you ever struggle with like how did controlling your eating and, because, now they call that time restricted eating, but you just did it because it felt right. And that's what I love about your approach is, they study it and they come up with things, but you're like from the yogi, you're like coming from the inside, learning it, feeling what does right, and then doing that. Did you struggle with like eating less, like ending at noon? And because what I love about Vipassana is like prison, right? And I'm not going to break the rules. I'm going to stop eating at noon. But once I get home, that's a different story. It's a lot harder. So how did that come naturally to you, or did you struggle with it?
The idea came naturally, not the practice. Because, first of all, you have to understand that your body's a creature of habit.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're eating a certain way and then you stop, let's say you're eating, dinner every day, and then one day you decide not to eat dinner
Yeah.
anymore, you're going to get extremely hungry at dinner time.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to, because your body's saying it's time to eat, even though you don't need food, you become addicted to eating at that time.
Yeah.
Everybody knows, it's not easy to break addictions. And there's no easy way to break addiction. So all I can say to you is, no, it wasn't easy at all. It was very difficult. Until I got myself on a new rhythm.
Right.
Right? Just like you talk to any heroin addict or nicotine addict.
Right.
They're going to tell you breaking the addiction wasn't easy.
Right.
But 1, 2, 3 years after they tried, it's much easier.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll go.
But you gotta deal with this stuff,
Yeah.
Michael. There's no avoiding the challenge,
Totally.
man. But
Yeah.
you know what helps? It's something that you said earlier. What helps is when you put yourself in a community that's supportive.
Yeah.
Even if it's online.
Yeah.
That's my weight loss and wellness program, right? It's like an online community. If you're because our society doesn't support this. They want you to eat more.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I love that idea, and the Buddhist idea, like the Dharma, the Sangha, the community, the teaching, and the Buddha, right? Those are those three ideas, and and all three of them together really support one another. So that's great. Thank you for that. I wrote down the yamas and the niyamas and the 8 limbs, and I think we pretty much covered all of them. Let's do, if you don't mind, let me do one more question. I'm going to list out the 8 limbs. So the yamas are the ethical standards. The niyamas are the disciplines. Asanas are your physical health. Pranayama, your breath, sort of using the breath for physical health. Pratyahara, sort of drawing in rather than like focus on the outside world. Dharana, concentration. Dhyana, meditation. And then samadhi, kind of whatever that is, when you achieve some union with something. But I was curious. I've only done a little bit of it, and I was wondering if it's part of your practice at all. Do you do any forms of pranayama, and how would you square that with Vipassana, which is kind of like the opposite of pranayama? I'm just curious. Do you do any of that in your practice?
No. I mean, I don't. And I do ujjayi pranayama throughout the asanas.
Yeah.
But that's all. I mean, if you understand yoga, then there's a lot of yoga going on out there. There's a lot of lineages of yoga. There's a lot of practices. There's no mention of pranayama like in the Buddhist traditions. And you have to. You can't do it all. There's not enough time in the day to do it all, and it's not necessary to do it all. I recommend trying as much as you can try, but then trying to decipher for yourself, what you're drawn to and what you like and what works for you and what you feel like you need. And then implementing that, right? So I did pranayama, I experienced it, and I wasn't drawn to it.
Mm-hmm.
I was drawn to the Vipassana really
Right.
is what I've been really drawn to, because I would disagree with you a little bit when you say the asana is for physical health. I would say the Vipassana is for physical health, because now we know that 95% of physical disease is coming from your
Right.
mind. Your body doesn't need that much.
Right.
I think asana is for feeling good in your body,
Mm.
dissolving tension, increasing blood flow. I think maintenance is important. I think you would agree that it's important to brush your teeth now
Mm-hmm.
and then, right? That's called
Mm-hmm.
maintenance, right? You're brushing your teeth. Well, why not brush your shoulders and why not brush your hip
Mm-hmm.
tendons? That's asana.
Mm-hmm.
It's a maintenance
Yeah.
practice. That's all. But all real health comes from a calm and peaceful mind. The oldest living people on earth don't do asana,
Yeah. Right.
but they do walk.
Right. Yeah.
They do
Yeah.
walk. So, I wouldn't get obsessed with asana being like it's needed for health. It's needed for maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maintenance is needed for health, sure. But remember, ultimately the disease is coming from your mind, not your body. It's just manifesting on your body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool.
That's
Yeah,
all.
I was. I hadn't looked at these things for years, and so I wanted to look. I was just curious what your thoughts were on them. And I 100%.
The 8 limbs are different than the yamas and the niyamas. You mentioned the 8 limbs.
Yeah.
That's where pranayama is. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with yamas.
No. Yeah. So the
Niyama.
yamas and the niyamas are the first two. Anyways. Um. Uh. And I.
But if you look at the yamas actually, there's like 5 or 6 or 8
I
yamas, and there's 5 or 6 or 8
Yeah, I
niyamas.
can read those. I wrote those down here too. And the one is your number one, like nonviolence. Number two, this is probably really good to talk about. Two is being truthful, satya. Three is not stealing. And I'd really be curious on your ideas of what that actually means in a real world, because I think people don't quite really think about that enough. And then moderation we already talked about, and non-attachment we already talked about. But how would you relate to non-stealing? Because it feels to me like there's just like cultural theft happening all the time in our culture in weird ways.
Well, for us the American listeners out there, what you just mentioned the Ten Commandments.
Uh-huh.
You just mentioned the Ten Commandments. You again, truth is truth. We're being spoon fed it from all these different angles. Find the angle that works for you. But basically, everything you just said has to do with your mind. And again, all real health comes from a calm and peaceful mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're trying to manipulate someone to buy your product, if you're lying or exaggerating or trying to give someone something they sell someone they don't need, in a way you're stealing. And yeah, you gotta, you have to be able to understand that. Like, you don't want the one great law that's biblical is do unto others as you want them to do unto you.
Yeah.
So you don't want someone to steal from you, don't steal from them. Don't want someone to lie to you, don't lie to them. You don't want someone to covet what you have, then don't covet what they have. It's that simple, and it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's simple. Like, and so what happens is that, you're scared that you're not going to have enough. So you rationalize why it's okay for you to lie or exaggerate about this thing that you're trying to sell somebody, right? And it's you're exaggerating, you're lying, this and that. Then that's the simple part, right? But then what you have to do, right, is you have to, the reason you're doing it is because you're afraid. You're afraid you're not going to have enough. You're afraid that you're not going to live up to what societal's expectations of success are. You're afraid that you'll be judged and criticized by other people. You're afraid that you'll be a failure in your parents' eyes. I mean, most of everybody's doing everything because they're scared. And the first thing that has to happen is you have to recognize that. And you have to say, like, okay, I'm scared, but I'm not going to let this fear dominate my actions. right? I am scared. I admit it, right? But I'm not gonna let my actions be dominated by fear, because nothing good can happen. And everything I'm doing out there is gonna come back to me. So let me start not enacting from that place, right? And then you open up, it's like an addict that's finally willing to say, okay, I'm not going to take another cigarette. What's going to happen? There's going to be a huge explosion of discomfort. But you got to go through it to get out of it. Humanity's going to have to do that in general, right? Like some big shifts are going to have to happen. Otherwise, we're going down. Perfectly. We're perfectly going down. And,
Well,
but, we're basically talking about breaking addictions.
yeah.
Whether it's the addictions to what you want, whether it's your addictions to feeding your fear, because those are what a lot of the successful people are doing, right? They're feeding their fear
Yeah.
in order to accumulate, and they're sacrificing their ethics and morals along the
I
way.
love what you said in your book, where you said that your biggest addiction is where your mind dwells or sits. I think that's something that we all should just meditate on more. It's like it's in that comfort zone of how we see ourselves and how we think that we get most addicted to. And so thanks for that. And I think that's a good wrap up for us individually and as the culture and everything is, it is. There's a lot of sinking ships around us, and if we can just be courageous and be ourselves, I again, thanks so much for talking to me today. Any last thoughts before we sign off here?
No, none at all.
Well, thanks again, Bryan.
I hope that was valuable. If you're interested in further coaching that we offer, in the description below, we'll have our latest offerings, our coaching for individuals, for businesses, our mentoring program, and the products that we offer. Thanks for being somebody who cares and is trying to do the right thing in the world, and we will see you in the next video, who, by the way, should be Wade Davis, the legendary anthropologist, National Geographic. I forget what his title is, but he teaches at the University of British Columbia. He's written The Serpent and the Rainbow, The Wayfinders, 23 other books. He's just a real joy and just a treasure trove of wisdom that is so needed in today's world. So looking forward to that one, and I hope to connect with you again on that episode or a future episode. And please leave comments below about topics, people that you'd really like to hear from. I'm always on the hunt for somebody who's not in the normal circuit, somebody who really, really needs to be heard, and it maybe isn't getting a voice. All right. Take care. See you soon.